Hi guys, good evening. I am Ilangovan, Axi.com online person for teaching zoology. So we have started about the molecular basis of inheritance, about the DNA molecule, RNA, the different types, etc. and also concluded with the split gene. So the eukaryotic gene is normally called as a split gene, unlike the prokaryotic gene. The meaning for that one, it contains both the coding sequence and non-coding sequence. So the coding sequence of DNA normally called as a exon. We have a number of exons which are being interrupted by some non-coding sequence of DNA what are called the introns. That is why the split gene is also called interrupted gene, what I mentioned earlier, independently discovered by normally Roberts as well as also Shaw. So these two persons actually discovered the split gene in the case of eukaryotic organisms. And what will happen during the process of splicing, what I mentioned actually, both exons and introns being normally transcribed or printed in mRNA. That mRNA without being processed, having both exon and intron regions, together called RNA precursor or primer RNA or heterogeneous nuclear RNA. Primer RNA or RNA precursor or heterogeneous nuclear RNA, as it contains both the introns as well as exons. So what will happen, the intron part which is not required for translation has been removed. This part has been removed, and then the exons having the coding sequences have been joined together to form what is called the mature mRNA. This is what is called the mature mRNA, having only the exons alone. Now the introns have been removed. That process of removal of introns and joining of exons to form a mature RNA, namely the mRNA, is called what is known as splicing process. So this is all about something about the split gene, what we have in the case of eukaryotic genes, a peculiar condition what we have. Now let's pass on to the next process with reference to the molecular genetics or molecular biology about the replication of DNA. It is one of the important events normally happening during the process of cell division. So it involves normally nothing with the duplication of one molecular DNA into 2 into 4. So there is a geometrical increase in number of DNA molecules, and normally this process is called duplication. 1 into 2 is called duplication. But we are using the word DNA replication because when the DNA undergoes duplication, it produces exact copy of itself. As it produces a Xerox copy or exact copy of itself, the process is called replication. So replication is a process by which normally the DNA makes its own copy. And actually what is happening during that process? The replication, otherwise what I mentioned, the duplication. And during that process, a single molecule of DNA gets duplicated into 2 daughter DNA molecules. 2 DNA molecules which are considered as daughter DNA molecules, as they have been actually derived from the parental DNA. And this process is also called autocatalysis. So the replication of DNA is the best example for autocatalysis. That means a particular material is capable of directing the synthesis of itself. So DNA directs the synthesis of its own molecule. That is why the process called autocatalysis, also called as replication, because it produces an exact copy of itself. When it is normally happening, the DNA replication, it's a synthetic process. So during the cell cycle, we have the different stages, and that too, between the two successive solutions, we have one stage what is called interphase. And during interphase, we have S1, S2 like that. Normally, it occurs during the S phase of what is called the interphase, the synthetic phase. So one of the subspaces during the interphase is a synthetic phase. During the synthetic phase or S phase of the cycle of cell division, that is normally during the interphase between the two successive cell division, the synthesis of DNA occurs. So before starting the cell division, the synthesis of DNA has been completed. Then only the cycle proceeds towards the mitotic phase. So synthetic phase and mitotic phase, you have the different stages during the cell cycle. And normally, what is the method of replication? How does the DNA replicate? What type of replication you could observe in the case of DNA process of replication? And two scientists already they have actually just proposed the molecular model of DNA. The same persons, that is James Watson actually, and then Frederick Crick. And now these two people in 1953 proposed the concept, one scheme, what is called semi-conservative scheme of replication. So the replication of DNA occurs by one method, what is called semi-conservative method. So what is the meaning of semi-conservative method of replication? Now what is happening during that process? This is the method what is suggesting actually. We have two strands of DNA. Suppose I am taking strand A and strand B. These are all the two strands which are joined together by means of hydrogen bonding between the complementary bases. And what will happen during the replication? So this is one DNA molecule with the two strands A and B. So during the process of replication, each strand is capable of producing its own complementary strand. In that process, this A strand is acting as a template. Out of the two strands, actually the two strands get separated. Each one is acting as a template for the synthesis of another strand. See here, the A strand is acting as a template for the synthesis of B strand. Similarly, the B strand is acting as a template for the synthesis of A strand. So out of these two strands, you know that one, the A strand is a newly formed one. Here the B strand is a newly formed one. So now we are getting two DNA molecules. In each DNA molecule, one strand is the parallel strand. Another strand is a newly synthesized strand. That means one of the two parallel strands have been conserved. And the next strand is the only strand, the one which is being synthesized newly. Likewise, if we are taking the second one, the B strand is the old strand, or we can say the parallel strand, which produces its own complementary strand, namely A strand. So the A strand is the newly synthesized one, where the B is the parallel strand. So out of the two daughter molecules produced, each daughter molecule has its own what is called the parallel strand 1 and a newly synthesized strand, that is the second one. So that is what is called semi-conservative method of replication. So the scheme suggested that the two strands would separate and each strand acts as a template for the synthesis of actually two new complementary strands. Then after replication, what will happen? We have seen already the DNA molecule form. Each one has one parallel strand and one what is called newly synthesized strand. That is why the method is called semi-conservative. So out of the two strands, one parallel strand has been conserved. That is called semi-conservative. And another strand is being synthesized by taking the A strand as a template here, the B strand as a template. So like that we are getting two different molecules, two DNA molecules, each of which normally looking like the parent, but one strand is a new strand and one strand is a old strand or the parallel strand. Now here normally what is happening, this is the point 1 indicating these are all the parallel strands, the parent DNA molecule we can see. So there are two complementary strands, 1 and 2, what I mentioned. And these two strands are base paired between A and T and G and C. Actually the two strands are base paired. So what will happen during the replication process? The two parallel strands separate. So this is a separation of what is called the two strands. Actually the unwinding of the two strands occur. The separation of two strands occur at several places, not in one point, at several points along the entire length of the DNA molecule, so that we have formed a fork-like structure, and as replication proceeds from that fork-like structure, this is what is called replication fork. See, the two strands get separated and the formation of the replication fork, this is the replication fork, and that is we have the separation and winding of the two strands occur at several points, not in one point, just like a zipper fashion, and zip and twisting of actually the two strands occur. And each parallel strand normally acts as a template. It provides a template and attracts and binds the actually the complementary base pairs. For example, A attracts normally just a T and G attracts C. So they are being actually bound with one another, forming a complementary basis. This is what is happening. Then what will happen ultimately? We have the backbone already seen is formed of sugar and phosphate. the sugar and phosphate backbone of the daughter strands are being closed, and now each new strand or new DNA molecule consists of one whole strand. Now this is a parallel strand, and a new strand is one. That is why it's called as a semi-conservative method. This is a simple illustration. We can have a better one also after this one. So the idea is normally showing the different stages: unwinding, formation and replication 4, and then binding and attracting and binding up complementary bases to form the new strand, and also the joining of the sugar phosphate backbone with the help of enzyme like ligase, etc., all being resulted in the production of two daughter DNA molecule, and each one is having its own parallel strand along with a newly synthesized strand. A simple illustration. Now, before entering the actual process of replication, so what are the materials, what are the catalysts, or what are the different enzymes which are taking part in DNA replication process? So at the site of replication 4, or after the formation of replication 4, what will happen? Many replication enzymes. The word replication enzymes referring to those enzymes which are taking part in replication process. So they got assembled on the DNA molecule where the replication is going to happen to form a complex molecular machine. A number of enzymes actually assemble on the DNA molecule where we have to just proceed the replication process to form a complex molecular machine. The name of the complex molecular, I am using the word machine because they are doing some actions. So complex molecular machines, all the enzymes together called as replisome. So the word replisome nothing but actually a group of enzymes which are taking part in the process of replication. So we have the following types of actually DNA replication enzymes, major enzymes which are taking part in the process of replication. Now what are the different enzymes which are taking part in the process of replication? All these enzymes together form the replisome, an enzyme complex, a molecular complex machine, and please normally assemble on the part of the DNA where we have to proceed the process of replication. Now the replisome contains the major DNA replication enzymes as follows. Number 1, helicase. Number 2, topoisomerase. Number 3, primase. Number 4, DNA polymerase. Number 5, DNA ligase. And normally you know that most of the enzymes are actually proteinaceous in nature. Here I mentioned one enzyme, primase. It is nothing but RNA polymerase. As it does the function of formation of a primer RNA, it is called a primase. It is nothing but an RNA polymerase that is taking part in the synthesis of what is called a small stretch of RNA. As this RNA begins the process of polymerization of what is called DNA, that is why it is called as primer. I will come to this later. Now what are the functions of these enzymes? Let's see one by one. Number 1, enzyme helicase. See, the two DNA strands are normally joined with one another by means of hydrogen bondings. We have the bases like this, base pairs, or simply called as the nucleotides, and the bases are joined with one another. Suppose we are taking A and a T. There are two hydrogen bondings. Between just a G and a C, there are 3 hydrogen bondings. We have seen already under the molecular structure of DNA. So this is a single base pair AT, another one GC. The number of hydrogen bondings actually playing a major role in providing stability. Now it is easy to break the bonding between A and T. The reason for that one, they have only 2 hydrogen bondings, and between G and C, the stability is more as they have 3 hydrogen bondings. Now what is the role of helicase? For the replication has to take place, the 2 strands must get separated. And for that we have to break the hydrogen bonds so that we will get the individual strands to act as a template. Now the helicase is an enzyme which unzips or untwists, just separating the 2 strands. The double helix, how? By breaking the hydrogen bondings. By breaking the hydrogen bondings, they build actually the basis of the 2 strands, where at the replication 4. So I will come to this replication 4 later, that where you have the proceedings of the replication occurs, a 4 is formed because of the separation of the 2 strands is called what is known as replication 4. So this helicase enzyme is responsible for unwinding or unzipping or untwisting the two DNA strand molecules from the double helix by breaking the two hydrogen bondings between A and T and G and C. The number of hydrogen bondings between A and T is 2 and between G and C is 3. So that we can make two parallel strands available. Now these are all the two parallel strands available, A and B. And each strand is acting as a template for the synthesis of another strand. This is the role of helicase, breaking the hydrogen bonds, separating the two strands, so that we have two separate strands and each one is acting as a template for the synthesis of another strand. So enzyme number 1, helicase. Now the second one, just we have topoisomerase. So actually you know that one, it is a double helical structure. The DNA is a double helical structure. Now normally suppose this point has been actually broken the hydrogen bondings. And this place is called supercoiling. The coiling of DNA present above the replication fork is called supercoiling. So still it is done because of the unwinding gradually in a zipper-like fashion. You know that when the two strands get separated. And now this is the point of replication fork and above which we have the coiling of the DNA is still there. That coiled part, the one which is unzipped, lying over the replication fork is called what is known as supercoiling. So this is the one which is present just ahead of the replication fork. Still the two strands normally get attached with one another. And that supercoiling is actually to be removed because of the unwinding of the two strands of DNA. This is brought about by what is called one enzyme topoisomerase. This enzyme is responsible for relaxing the DNA from a supercoiled structure. Now this is the part, the helical structure, ahead of the replication fork, and that should be actually unwind or it should be just actually separated or just untwisted. This is because of the topoisomerase. Its main function is normally relieving the tension. Actually, the one which is ahead of the replication fork. Now this is the point what I mentioned already. Suppose we have the structure. So this is the place of replication fork and this is the point ahead of replication fork, above that one. So these are the two strands already, just a part of the two strands being separated. Still we have the coiling ahead of this replication fork and that is being relieved or relaxed, the tension being relieved or relaxed because of the untwisting of the two strands by this topoisomerase. So that the helicase enzyme just breaks the hydrogen bondings between the two strands. So there is a role played by topoisomerase. Relax the DNA from a supercoiled nature. That means it relieves the tension ahead of the replication fork due to the untwisting of the double helix. So this part is already untwisted and this part has to be untwisted, and for that one just actually for giving chance to the helicase enzyme to untwist. Now this topoisomerase relaxes supercoiling. So normally there is also another enzyme, some specific enzyme you can have, for example even the RNA virus, say an example of retrovirus, AIDS virus, the HIV virus. We have an enzyme what is called gyrase. It is also a protein. So this DNA gyrase is found in some cases. It is a special type of topoisomerase responsible for relieving the strain of unwinding DNA. Strain, the force, actually the tension. So this is a special type of topoisomerase mainly performed by the topoisomerase just relaxing the supercoiling just above the replication fork or ahead of the replication fork. And we have in some cases there is a specific DNA gyrase. It is nothing but a special type of topoisomerase. That's the function of topoisomerase, relieving the strain of the unwinding DNA molecule. So simply we can say topoisomerase is responsible for relaxing the supercoiling just ahead of the replication fork, for providing a chance to the helicase to just break the hydrogen bond. Now primase. So this is nothing but RNA polymerase. This is nothing but RNA polymerase. Based on the function it works, it is called as a primase, RNA polymerase. Now what will happen? We have the DNA polymerase, an enzyme, the one which is taking part in replication process. But the DNA polymerase enzyme cannot initiate the replication process. It has no ability of initiating the replication process. So at the point of replication fork, maybe this is the replication fork. Now a small stretch of RNA being laid down to initiate the replication process. This small stretch of DNA just being laid down to the existing DNA template strand. Now this is the DNA template strand. Now based on what is called complementarity, a small stretch of RNA being actually delivered or synthesized by one RNA polymerase enzyme, because it is the one which can initiate the process of replication. Once this RNA primer is laid down, then the further events of elongation of the DNA or the polymerization of the DNA has been carried out by the DNA polymerase enzyme. So DNA polymerase cannot have the ability to initiate the replication process. For that, a small segment of RNA, what is called as a primer. This is called as a primer. A small stretch of RNA being laid down the point where the replication has to be started, and that primer is actually laid down by the activity of one enzyme, what is called RNA polymerase. As it is normally initiating the formation of primer RNA, it is called primase. So it is a starting point. This primase provides a starting point for RNA, actually starting point of RNA. For DNA polymerase has to proceed for the lengthening of new strand. So once RNA has been laid down, here the DNA polymerase start working just to initiate or to elongate or extend the DNA just a strand to be formed. So it provides a starting point of RNA for DNA polymerase to begin the synthesis of new strand. So now this is the DNA polymerase, it begins the synthesis of new strand. Once actually the DNA has been completed formation, that is what is called the replication has been completed in that strand. Now this RNA has been removed. This RNA primer has been removed. That place is also replaced by DNA nucleotides. This is what is happening. So this primase enzyme normally binds a small stretch of RNA. Now a small stretch of RNA is bound to the DNA template, to the existing strand of DNA. And this actually small segment which is being bound with this what is called the existing DNA by the primase is called as a primer. And soon what will happen, that will be eventually replaced by the DNA, just actually nucleotides while proofreading by the DNA polymerase. So very simply, primase is nothing but enzyme responsible for making the RNA primer, the one which is normally bound with the DNA template already present or existing DNA template for initiating process of replication. Once the primer has been laid out, now the starting point for DNA replication has been started with the help of DNA polymerase. So as soon as the primer has been laid down, now the DNA polymerase is ready to start the proceeding, nothing but the extension of the DNA molecule to form a new strand. So this is what is happening. So primase is nothing but RNA polymerase responsible for the synthesis of stretch of RNA at the beginning of the DNA replication. At the beginning of the DNA replication. So and also for the elongation of the DNA for the DNA polymerase to act. Now the next enzyme, DNA polymerase. The name itself, we know that one is one of the enzymes responsible for polymerization process. It doesn't normally initiate the process of replication. Once again I am saying that it has no ability of initiating the replication process. The process of replication has been initiated only by the RNA primer synthesized by the primase enzyme, and normally this RNA primer has actually a free hydroxyl group at the third position. A free hydroxyl group at the third position, and that free hydroxyl group is actually the starting point for the DNA polymerase to just add the new nucleotides to form a new strand. Now, what is the role of this DNA polymerase? Simply it is responsible for elongating the DNA molecule, actually the replication fork. By adding one by one the nucleotides in 5'3' direction. Don't forget, the synthesis of DNA always occurs. A replication of the DNA always occurs. All process, even for example the transcription of mRNA, the synthesis of actually protein all happens to occur only in 5' to 3' direction. Starting point 5', ending point 3'. So anyway, this enzyme DNA polymerase adds the nucleotides one by one in 5' to 3' direction to the new and the growing DNA strand. This is the role of what is called DNA polymerase. So a polymer of nucleotides being formed because of the addition of one by one the nucleotides in 5' 3' direction with the help of DNA polymerase. So in addition to this function of polymerization, it is also responsible for proofreading and as well as for error correction. Because of that only just to be harmed, the percentage of what is called mutation is least. We have just actually the mutation is the least percentage. Can happen one in 100 million genes. So that is because of the proofreading. So it reads if there is any correction in base pairing, it does that one so that what will happen, the error being rectified. So the main role performed by this DNA polymerase, not only polymerization process but also proofreading after the DNA has been completed. Any error in the DNA molecule during synthesis has been avoided, has been removed. That is why you see that one there is no chance of mutation. If there is any error, you know that one during replication process it always resulted in mutation. That is being prevented because of the enzyme DNA polymerase, because it is acting as a proofreader. Now DNA ligase. And this is the enzyme normally responsible for joining the sugar and phosphate backbone. See, normally the DNA replication occurs. In one of the strands, the DNA replication takes place continuously. The new DNA strand has been produced continuously. In another strand, actually the DNA segments have been produced in broken fragments, not continuously, discontinuously. So that we have what will happen, many fragments of DNA while formation. You see the picture. So all these fragments of actually DNA which are produced discontinuously are called Okazaki fragments. And the name of the scientist, a Japanese scientist, Okazaki. So in one of the strands, the DNA replication occurs discontinuously in the form of broken what is called DNA segments. These broken DNA fragments are called Okazaki fragments. It is found only on the lagging strand. Actually, what do you mean by lagging strand? Just after finishing this one. So, and all these fragments have been joined together to form a continuous DNA strand with the help of DNA ligase. So it normally joins a sugar phosphate backbone of Okazaki fragment. So all the fragments have been joined together to form a continuous DNA new strand. So it creates what is called a new continuous strand by joining the sugar phosphate backbone, and that is a role played by ligase, paste molecule. We can say it is called as a paste molecule. DNA ligase is a paste molecule. Just like for example endonuclease enzyme, which is acting as a scissor, a molecular blade, a molecular scissor used for cutting the DNA. But this one is used for joining the DNA fragments, hence called DNA ligase, also called as a paste molecule. Now, other than these enzymes like topoisomerase, helicase, primase, DNA polymerase and ligase, we have also some other actually proteins involved, that is in doing the process of replication. So number one, DNA clamp. So this is nothing but a protein normally. See, the enzyme responsible for the formation of continuous strand during replication process is DNA polymerase. DNA polymerase is the enzyme responsible for polymerization process. We have two different types, 1 and 3. Both are taking part in replication process. We'll see what is the role of DNA polymerase 1 and DNA polymerase 3. Now, for the replication has to proceed for the synthesis of DNA, this DNA polymerase should normally bound with what is called the template strand or the parallel strand. So, it should be associated with what is called the template strand. Now this DNA clamp is a protein which normally prevents this DNA polymerase 3 from dissociating from what is called the DNA parent strand. So for the continuous synthesis of DNA, we need this DNA polymerase 3 should be bound with what is called the template strand. I will show you the picture. So if it is not associated with that what is called the DNA template strand, there is no formation, there is no replication, there is no polymerization of DNA strand. And for polymerization has to take place, this enzyme should be bound with the template strand of DNA. And that is clamped or just bound by the protein what is called DNA clamp. That is why it's called DNA clamp proteins. So binding with the DNA polymerase to what is called the template strand for proceeding the process of replication. So that is the role of DNA clamp. Another one we have what is called single strand binding protein, SSB, single strand binding protein. See, the helicase enzyme is responsible for what is called actually the breaking down the hydrogen bonds to form two separate strands. And suppose if the helicase enzyme is proceeding towards one end, breaking the hydrogen bonds, if the joining of the two strands occur at the posterior end or just behind that helicase enzyme, there is no process of replication. And for that we need the help of this protein what is called single strand binding protein. The single strand binding protein normally binds to the single stranded DNA. So this is the DNA strand, single stranded DNA strands. Now still these are all the parts yet to be actually separated. Here is the enzyme helicase. Now this single strand binding protein binds with the strands and not allowing the strands or preventing the strand from re-annealing. Re-annealing actually nothing but actually the union of the two strands once again to form a double helix. So it maintains normally the single strand condition of the DNA molecule after the two strands have been just what is called unwound or untwisted and zipped by the helicase enzyme. So maintaining what is called actually the single stranded nature of the template strand. So the single strand binding protein, you will see in the picture also, binds to single stranded DNA and prevents the DNA double helix from re-annealing, once again forming a paired strand joined together by means of hydrogen bonding, and that is called re-annealing. After the helicase enzyme unwinds it, thus maintaining what is called the strand separation, not allowing the two strands once again to join together. That is why we have the template strand structure has been maintained because of what is called single strand binding protein. The first one is responsible for actually associating the DNA polymerase, with the DNA strand to proceed the replication process. Now the next one, a rare instance also, we have telomerase enzyme. So the end of the chromosome is called telomere, you know that one. The end of the chromosome is called telomere. The DNA which is normally found at the tip of the telomere or at the end of the chromosome is called telomeric DNA. Now this is called telomeric DNA. Now telomerase is an enzyme. It lengthens the telomeric DNA by adding repetitive sequence of DNA. Like this, repetitive sequence. By repetitive sequence of DNA at the ends of the eukaryotic chromosome, not in the case of prokaryotic chromosome. So the telomerase enzyme is responsible for increasing the length of the telomeric DNA by adding repetitive sequence of DNA at the ends of the eukaryotic chromosome. That is called telomerase. So these are all the different types of actually enzymes which are taking part, the enzymes as well as the protein, SSB protein, then what is called the DNA clamp. They are all taking part, all together called as the replisome, a complex responsible for the replication process. Now, what is the mechanism of replication? I mentioned already replication is nothing but a polymerization process because many monomers are added to form a long chain polymer. That's why it's called polymerization process. That occurs in three enzyme catalyzed or an enzymatic catalyzed reactions and the coordinated steps. So there are three enzymatic catalyzed and coordinated steps during the process of replication. What is the first process? Initiation. Once a small segment of DNA is formed by several mechanisms, then it is being elongated. That is called the extension process. Once the complete DNA replication has been completed, there is a termination process to stop the replication process. So we have to initiate the replication process, that is called initiation. Another one, the lengthening of or growing of the new DNA strand, that is called extension process. And finally, we have the termination process, the one, a physical process to stop the replication event. Now let's take what do you mean by initiation process. So for the replication has to take place, we need a starting point. So normally in the case of eukaryotic chromosomes, you have in the DNA, the replication occurs actually begins at several locations. Suppose this is a DNA. For example, this is a DNA. The replication normally occurs at several points or locations. And these points are called origin of replication. The place where the replication process has to begin is called the origin of replication. This place is normally targeted by a number of initiator proteins, because actually to want to have the replication process to be processed properly, and these areas, the place of origin of replication, namely the origin of replication, is normally targeted by a number of initiation proteins. They are all responsible for initiating process of replication. So, but in the case of E. coli bacterium, see the DNA is more or less, that one circular DNA, or we have just, in the case of E. coli, there is one protein. The protein which is normally acting as an initiator protein is called DNA A. The protein is not nucleic acid, the protein is called DNA A. In yeast, the same protein is called what is called as origin recognition complex. Origin recognition complex. Normally, these proteins, the initiator proteins, actually, they use certain sequences. And what are the sequences used by this initiator protein for breaking? So, suppose for example, they are using certain sequences. At that point only, we have what is called the replication. Just a process proceeds. Now, these initiator proteins now is selecting certain sequences of DNA. Actually, and these sequences are used by the initiator protein for the formation of replication form. So the sequences normally used by the initiator proteins are particularly AT-rich sequences. Suppose we have the DNA sequence where we have A and T much more. So the sequences normally used by actually these initiator proteins are AT-rich. That is, AT-rich means actually the places where we have the base pairing between A and T, that is adenine thymine. Because this A and T, that is adenine thymine bases, normally they are sharing only 2 hydrogen bonds. So that it is easier for these proteins to break up, or just actually for the helicase enzyme to break, because the number of hydrogen bonds between A and T is actually 2 only when compared to G and C, so it is less stable. So these initiator proteins normally choose the locations, what is called the origin of replication. So the origin of replication is always actually having the sequences with AT-rich, because AT normally adenine thymine, they have base pairing, they actually just normally pair, they are sharing only 2 hydrogen bonds, so it is easy for the helicase enzyme to break it. To make it easier for breakage, now the initiator proteins are choosing the origin of location, that is a sequence where you have A and T rich. That is a place of origin of replication. Don't forget, the origin of replication is always rich in A and T, because it is easier to break the bonding between A and T as the number of hydrogen bondings only 2. So there is a initiation process. So the initiation process is nothing but the origin of replication. That point has been chosen by initiator proteins. That initiator protein normally actually choose a sequence, the sequence of DNA which is rich in what is called DNA, and that is the point of breakage. Now in the case of, for example, if you are taking for example E. coli bacteria, there is no formation of replication form, and it is more or less actually the origin of replication. The DNA is more or less circular. The origin of replication occurs here, so it produces more or less what is called actually theta structure. It always produces a theta structure. The replication fork is not formed in the case of E. coli. There is only one origin of replication, but for eukaryotic actually DNA, there are many origins of replication. And again, the DNA is more or less circular in the case of E. coli bacteria. Now, there is no replication fork, and the origin of replication gives what is called actually a theta structure, the symbol theta. Now, coming back to that one. So, what do you mean by extension? So, in the case of all eukaryotic DNA, or in the case of many DNA viruses, or in the case of phage viruses, and also in the case of plasmid. So these DNA molecules, either the eukaryotic DNA or what is called the DNA of viruses or the DNA of phages or the plasmid DNA, they use the enzyme what I mentioned, the primase. That enzyme is responsible for the synthesizing a short RNA segment, what is called RNA primer. It is a must because DNA polymerase has no ability of initiating the replication process or polymerization. It has to be stimulated. And for that one, a small stretch of RNA has been laid down to the existing what is called the template strand of DNA with the help of an enzyme what is called primase. As if that's the function of formation of primer, it's called primase. It's nothing but RNA polymerase. Now this RNA primase is having a free hydroxyl group at the third position of the carbon atom. And to this point only, subsequently what will happen, the DNA nucleotides are added by the DNA polymerase so that it is elongated. So we have a small stretch of RNA. This is a small stretch of RNA. Here we have the hydroxyl group to the third carbon atom. This is a free hydroxyl group. To this only the DNA nucleotides are added so that the elongation process occurs by the polymerase enzyme DNA polymerase. We have two different types of polymerase. Let's cover this one. Now, how many primers are produced on the leading strand and how many just primers are produced on a lagging strand? So I mentioned just during DNA replication we have one strand is formed continuously. This is what is called as the leading strand. So during DNA replication the two DNA strands get aparted, get separated. Each one is acting as a template. And in one template, now what is happening, the DNA synthesis continues. Now this is a parallel strand, this is a new strand. You see that one, the DNA nucleotides have been added continuously, so a continuous strand being synthesized. In another parallel template strand, now the DNA is formed in broken fragments. This is what is called a lagging strand. So the strand where the continuous synthesis of DNA takes place is called as a leading strand. The strand where you have the discontinuous synthesis of DNA, synthesis occurs, is called as a lagging strand. So now the leading strand recruits only one prime. That is what is called one RNA prime. Because we have only one continuous strand. Whereas the lagging strand we have just many broken fragments are formed as short segments. We need many primers. So that this one recruits, employs many or several primers. As for each fragment we need a primer. So we have many primers or several primers are used by what is called the lagging strand. This is the one which is formed discontinuously. Whereas the leading strand employs or recruits only one. That is what is called RNA primer. That is enough to initiate the replication process in that strand. So normally during the replication process, in one of the strands, the DNA is synthesized continuously. In another template strand, the DNA is produced discontinuously. The strand which produces DNA continuously is called leading strand. The strand which produces actually the DNA discontinuously is called as a lagging strand. So that is about. So the leading strand recruits or employs one RNA primer, whereas actually the lagging strand recruits normally several RNA primers because we have several fragments of DNA. Each fragment needs one RNA primer. So I mentioned earlier, now you see that when the leading strand is continuously extended without any breakage from the primer. So the primer is nothing but RNA. Now this is the primer. Now the DNA is continuously processed. It is being extended in the case of leading strand. And the enzyme involved in this process for continuous synthesis of DNA is called what is known as high processivity DNA polymerase. The enzyme. So polymerase enzyme not only of one type, we have many types. For example, polymerase 1, 2, 3. Now the high processivity DNA polymerase is polymerase 3. It's also called delta polymerase delta or delta polymerase. So, and polymerase 1 or alpha polymerase is a low processivity DNA polymerase. So anyway, the leading strand is extended continuously by what is called actually, that is starting point is a primer, that is RNA from the primer, by a high processivity DNA polymerase called polymerase 3 or simply polymerase delta or delta polymerase. But the lagging strand is discontinuously extended, what I mentioned just now, it is discontinuously extended. Not by the same enzyme, by another enzyme. The enzyme is called polymerase 1, DNA polymerase 1. It's also called polymerase alpha or alpha polymerase. So polymerase 3 is otherwise called delta polymerase, and polymerase 1 is also called this, what is called polymerase, that is alpha. So anyway, the leading strand is produced continuously by polymerase 3 or delta polymerase. The lagging strand is produced discontinuously by the polymerase 1, or we can say what is called polymerase alpha. Remember these 2 points. Now once actually, so the primer is laid down, you know that one. This is RNA primer, this is the parallel strand. Now this is a new strand. So I mentioned already, once the polymerase does the action of polymerization of the nucleotides, what will happen? This RNA polymer, a segment of DNA, has been removed. And who is the remover? Suppose for example, there is one enzyme, RNA nuclease, ribonucleic acid plus AAC, ribonuclease enzyme. That enzyme is responsible for removing the RNA primer fragments, what is called, just from that point of formation. And the low processivity DNA polymerase, I mentioned high processivity, the highly active. Now the less active, the low processivity polymerase 1 and high processivity polymerase is polymerase 3. And now this enzyme enters. It's also called alpha polymerase, enters and fills the gaps. Now we have the gaps here. Now the primer has been removed because of the effect of RNA nuclease enzyme, so ribonuclease enzyme, and now that gap is filled by DNA polymerase 1. Because to synthesize a nucleotide, and that part is normally substituted by the DNA nucleotides. So the RNA-AC or simply ribonuclease enzyme removes the primer, and that place is occupied by or filled by enzyme DNA polymerase 1 to synthesize a new, because it is a discontinuous strand where the enzyme acting is nothing but DNA polymerase 1 to continue the synthesis. So when this process is going on, that is actually the primer has been removed and the DNA polymerase 1 has been actually added to this area. What will happen? So we have a single nick on the leading strand. So single nick means only one break. And then many nicks or several nicks on the lagging strand. So many broken points, we know that one. So when this complete, a single nick on the leading strand and several nicks on the lagging strands can be formed. And as a result, what will happen? These are all joined together in the case of lagging strand by a mix of ligase. That enzyme normally works out to fill these nicks, the gaps. Thus, you see that one, what will happen? A continuous strand of what is called a new DNA has been created. This is because of the ligase effect. So the broken segments are joined with one another. This is because of the effect of ligase, and it works out that process. So now we can get once again continuous strand is formed. Though we have formed discontinuously the DNA strand in one of the template strand, because of the effect of the ligase enzyme, all the broken segments, what we can say, the fragments, the opposite fragments are joined together to form a continuous strand. This is what is happening because of the effect of the ligase enzyme. Now, what is the nature of the primase enzyme in the case of bacteria, and what is the nature of primase enzyme in the case of eukaryotes? Now, the nature of the primase enzyme in the case of bacteria, it belongs to a group what is called DNA G protein. It belongs to the group what is called DNA G protein. Whereas in the case of actually eukaryotes, the primase used by them is RNA recognition motif or RM. So this is nothing but a protein. That is also nothing but a protein. So the primase enzyme, to which group it belongs? In bacteria, the primase enzyme is nothing but a protein belonging to DNA G protein. In the case of eukaryotes, it belongs to a protein what is called RNA recognition motif or RM. So there is a chemical nature of the primase. Just a little bit you have to know. What is the nature of primase in the case of bacteria? It is a DNA G protein. What's the nature of primase in the case of eukaryotes? It is otherwise called RNA recognition motif or RM. So we have that one, the role of DNA polymerase is nothing but the polymerization process. Though it doesn't actually initiate the polymerization process or replication process, its main function is the elongation of the growing strand by adding the nucleotides. But it has some other functions, multiple functions. Now, what are the multiple roles played by this DNA polymerase? See that one. In E. coli, the polymerase 3, and that is primarily responsible for the replication process. That is actually the polymerization in E. coli. Then in the case of DNA polymerase 1, see, we have both DNA polymerase 3 and 1, both are taking part in the formation or in the proceedings of DNA replication. The discontinuous strand is produced by this DNA polymerase 1. The continuous strand is produced by actually polymerase 3. So these are all some of the multiple functions. So DNA polymerase 1 is an enzyme responsible for replacing RNA primase with the DNA. I mentioned already RNA is responsible for the breaking of what is called prime. So in the case of normally bacteria, in addition to the functions of what is called actually polymerization, it's also responsible for replacing the RNA primer, just actually with the DNA. So it has dual role, not only for polymerization process, but also responsible for removing the RNA primer, for replacing it with DNA. Now, this DNA polymerase 1 has some more activities. In addition to the polymerase activity, it is also acting as an exonuclease. It has both polymerase activity and exonuclease activity. So polymerase activity is responsible for extending the DNA molecule, whereas the exonuclease activity is responsible for degrading the prime. Suppose, for example, we have, this is the polymerase enzyme. Say an example of polymerase 1. Now this is the primer, and this is what is called the strand to be elongated. So this one, polymerase 1. Now at the hind region or at the rear end, just actually behind of it. Now this is behind of it. This is the anterior part and this is the posterior part. So the polymerase 1 enzyme normally responsible for degrading the primer RNA. That is the one which is present ahead of it, just anterior to it. At the same time, it adds the nucleotides behind it to the growing DNA strand. So a single enzyme has dual functions here. It normally degrades the RNA polymer, RNA primer. That is the one which is ahead of it, anterior to it. At the same time, adds nucleotides to the growing DNA, what is called the strand, behind it. So degrade the primer RNA ahead of it, just anterior to it, and extends the DNA strand by adding the nucleotides behind of it. And these two processes have been done by this what is called the DNA polymerase 1, and this process is called nick translation. What is nick translation? So it removes or degrades the primer RNA ahead of it or anterior to it and extends the DNA, the new strand, by adding the nucleotides behind of it. This phenomenon is called nick translation. Nick translation. Now, out of the two enzymes, polymerase 1 and polymerase 3, which is more processed, which is more active, when compared to what is called DNA polymerase 3, then the DNA polymerase 1 is less processed because its primary function is in the production of actually a number of short segments of DNA rather than a few long segments. So normally DNA polymerase 3 produces long segment of DNA. Then polymerase 1 is actually produces a few or actually many short, see that one, many short DNA regions rather than a few long regions. Simply we can say, so DNA polymerase 3 is responsible for the production of long just regions of DNA, whereas polymerase 1 is responsible for actually creating many short regions of what is called, that is DNA, in the form of Okazaki fragments. So indirectly we can say polymerase 1 is less processing by producing what is called discontinuous strand, whereas DNA polymerase 3 is very processing or highly processing because it produces long strand of DNA. So these are some of the multiple roles played by actually the DNA polymerase. Now in the case of eukaryotes, the processivity initiating enzyme, the process has been initiated in the case of eukaryotes is nothing but polymerase alpha, and it has intrinsic primase activity. So it is also acting as a primase for initiating the synthesis of DNA, intrinsic within. So in addition to that, what is called actually this processivity initiating enzyme, the one which initiates the process of polymerization, that is polymerase alpha, nothing but polymerase 1. It has intrinsic primase activity. So acts as a primer, initiating what is called acts as an enzyme initiating the process of formation of primer, which is being preceded by what is called the DNA polymerase for the extension of the DNA molecule. Now, those enzymes which are responsible for extending the DNA molecule are considered as, we know that one, high processivity extension enzyme. This is the initiating enzyme, polymerase 1, because it initiates the polymerization process by making what is called DNA primer, not RNA primer, DNA primer. That's why it's called intrinsic activity. The high processivity extensive enzymes or the extension enzymes responsible for the extension of the DNA molecule are polymerase delta, otherwise polymerase 3, and also polymerase epsilon. Same polymerase 3 has different names. So delta and epsilon. Actually, in the case of I mentioned earlier, there is only one origin of replication. That is why the replication process produces a delta structure. A theta structure. So produces a theta structure. So as there is a single origin of replication equal, I mentioned earlier, normally the replication produces a theta structure. That is only one origin of replication. But in the case of eukaryotes, we have the formation of many replication forks. The replication forks actually formed with what is called two prongs. So we have actually two projections, but in eukaryotes, a replication fork is formed with the two prongs. But in the case of actually, that is E. coli, there is only one origin of replication, so it gives a theta structure. But in the case of eukaryotes, we have a replication fork is formed with the two prongs. These are all the prongs, the two arms. Now what is replication fork? I mentioned earlier. So it is actually a structure that is formed during DNA replication. And how is it created? Normally it is created by the enzyme helicase. Now the helicase enzyme acting in this manner, so that we have formed the replication fork with what is called the two prongs. I mentioned once again the prongs, that's correct spelling here. So it is created by helicase which break the hydrogen bonds between the two strands of DNA, the one responsible for holding the two DNA strands together. And the resulting structure is called the replication fork with the two prongs. This is prong number 1, this is prong number 2. And each one is made up of single strand of DNA. So each prong, now this is one prong, this is another prong, the limb. And this one, each prong is made up of what is called a single strand of DNA. That one is acting as a template strand. That one is acting as a template strand for the synthesis of new DNA molecule. So that is about the replication fork, and further events about actually the process of replication will continue just normally with the reference to the replication fork and how far the DNA being synthesized, in what direction, etc. We can see the next class. As one at a time, I am concluding my lecture. We will proceed towards the next class. Thank you. Till then, goodbye. Class is completed.